Well, well. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library and to this beautiful space overlooking Fifth Avenue. We're gathered here for the Get Lit Book Club. My name is Brian Jones. I'm the Senior Director of Reading and Engagement here at the New York Public Library. And the Get Lit Book Club is the product of a partnership with WNYC that started in 2020 and has continued since as a wonderful opportunity for New Yorkers to come together and share our love of reading. Now listen, while you're here, we hope you'll get a library card. Check out some books. Learn more about the programs happening in this building. We'd love to see you again. And don't forget to stop by the check-in desk on your way out. If you fill out a short audience survey, which is very helpful for us, you will get a free prize. For those watching virtually, you will not get a free prize. However, welcome. We're happy to have you as well, and we hope you have the opportunity to visit us in person soon. I invite all of you, whether following us virtually or here in this room, to check out everything NYPL has going on this fall, including all kinds of back-to-school supports for kids and teens, programs at our branches for all ages, major exhibitions, ongoing celebrations for the Schomburg Center's centennial, and much, much more. But let's start the show. We kick off tonight, the season, by welcoming author Michael Chabon in celebration of the 25th anniversary of his Pulitzer Prize winning novel, The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay. And we're so thrilled to have with us also Gene Scheer, the award-winning librettist who transformed Michael's book into a contemporary opera that is being featured at the Met Opera right now through October 11th. And if that wasn't enough, we also have some of the performers from the Met Opera. Lastly, we're just so grateful to Allison Stewart and the whole WNYC team for being such wonderful partners on the book club this year. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy the show, and take it away, Allison.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you after summer. I hope you had a good summer. Let me do a little bit of housekeeping first of all. You'll see these microphones that are planted around. They're for our radio production. So we want people to know you're here, laugh, cry, gasp, grasp your pearls, whatever. We want them to know that you're in the audience. I am going to take this moment to say, please silence your cell phones. Don't put them away. We love pictures. Tag us on Instagram at all of it WNYC. We will repost. I'm going to talk to Michael for about 25 minutes, and then I'll open it up for questions, and I'll come to the audience for questions because we like questions. You know what I mean. And I am the daughter of a public school teacher, so I will wrap it up if you don't put questions. We try to run a tight ship. It'll be about an hour long, so we ask you to stay until the end. You'll want to stay until the end. We'll also announce our October Get Lit book club selection, and Michael will be signing books out in the lobby. So let's get started. 25 years ago, The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay was published. In 2021, it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and now in 2025, it's been adapted into a grand fashion for the Metropolitan Opera, thanks to our partners at the New York Public Library. 2,869 of you were able to check out a copy to read along with us. Please welcome Michael Chabon.
Hello, Allison.
Hello, it's so nice to see you.
Good to see you too. How are you?
All right, I'm well, thanks. September 19th. 2000, the book comes out.
Yes.
Been a pretty good year. You had Wonder Boys come out as a movie.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, around the same time. What was going on with you personally at that time in your life?
It was it was a challenging. It was published at the sort of end of a challenging period in the life of my family. We had been through some stuff. I had worked really hard for a long time on this thing that, everything looks foreordained in hindsight, but I had gotten so many puzzled, discouraging kind of reactions whenever I tried to summarize what it was about at dinner table conversations. You go out with people and like, so what's your book about? And it's in 2000, we hadn't had any Oscar-winning superhero movies, like Black Panther. We hadn't had the whole Marvel Comics universe. It sort of has completely transformed everyone's idea of who, not so much what superheroes are, but who they're for, and the size of the audience that now takes an interest in superheroes and to still a lesser degree, but still comic books generally. And we hadn't had the whole graphic novel explosion. It was sort of just getting going in earnest when Kavalier and Clay came out. It was at the same time that Chris Ware and Dan Clowes, who are kind of two of the leading engines for the explosion, published books right at that same moment. So when I would tell people, I'm working on this book about two guys who go into the comic book business in New York and create a superhero, it was a conversation killer. And I got a lot of pitying remarks.
Sad
or
looks.
I'm trying to think, try to imagine if somebody told you they were writing a novel about Pokemon or something like that. It was that people just thought what a waste of time. How long have you been working on this book? And so
Well, how long were you working on this?
5
This is
years.
a big fat book.
Yes, I know.
For 5 years.
I know, 5 years.
Where did you write it? How did you write it? Day by day? Did you pick a certain number of hours a day you wrote?
I work every day, or at least I try to, and I try to get 1,000 words a day, day in, day out, as much as possible. And that helps a little because you have to, it's even shorter novels are still full of words. And so you just have to, if you want to get to 40,000 words, 50,000 words, that's sort of a smaller, shorter novel. Still, that's a lot of 1,000-word days. And I tried to reassure myself while I was working on it that I was telling a story that was both a personal story, but also an American story that was about a really fascinating period in American history that was set in the world's greatest city at the time where, in my opinion, it was kind of reaching its peak of greatness culturally, and all the innovations in music and in theater and in ways of organizing society, where all these experiments were being conducted in New York City at the time. Some of them successful and some not, but it was a time of such ferment. I just thought, it's not going to be just about two guys. I hope that's not how people see it. But on the other hand, also, I didn't know what I was doing either, because I had never written a book that was set in another time period, a period I didn't live in. And at that time, 25 years ago, there were still a lot of people around who were sort of more or less the same age as my characters, or maybe a little younger, but had grown up in the world I was trying to persuade people I knew anything about. And I was very nervous about those people reading the book, and people who had grown up in Brooklyn in the 1930s and 40s, people who remembered the popular culture and what it was like just to walk down the street, and I was very nervous because I was, in a sense, lying. If I'm writing this book and I'm saying it was this kind of a day on this afternoon in New York, I don't know anything about that. I'm making
fiction.
it up. So
You're allowed. It's fiction.
And I was quite, so I had a lot of reason to be anxious when this book came out, and I did not know what to expect.
What was the first seed for the book?
Well, the sort of proximate cause for me was sort of a two-part thing where at one point I had a large comic book collection as a kid, and it got as large as it did because my father, who did grow up in Brooklyn, he was born in '38, was a big comic book reader as a kid, and when he had a child that was of an age to read comic books, he started to buy them again, and he would read them all first and then give them to me. So, like, comics were something that we shared, and I had this pretty big collection. I sold it to another kid I knew when I was about 16 years old. He was 14 years old. He was this like total entrepreneur, 14-year-old. He was like buying and selling all kinds of comics and other things. And he bought my collection, and I thought I got very, very much thought I got the best of him, but I was wrong. Anyway, but I saved this one box, and they were the comics that were written and drawn by a guy named Jack Kirby, who was one of the greatest comic book artists, creators of all time. And he was my favorite, and I just couldn't bear to part with those books. So I kept them, and I taped this box up, and I never opened it. But I moved many times as I got older, and I always took it with me. And then one day we were moving, and I was trying to waste time, and I just opened the box up, and the smell of old comic books, if you know it, is just this really rich, evocative. It smells like the past. It's like this smell of memory. And it came out of the box, and I just had this feeling of like, there's a novel in this box somewhere, in this smell. Like there's something about the past that I'm going to write that has to do with comic books, but I don't know what yet. And then a little time, not very much time went by, and I went to the doctor's office or dentist's office or something, and they had a Smithsonian, old Smithsonian magazines on the table. That was back when there were magazines. And I picked one up, and they had an article in it about these two young guys, Jewish guys from Cleveland, Ohio, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who created this character of Superman. It was like a very Smithsonian magazine kind of article. And part of the story was, and it was a story that I knew, I remembered, but that they had sold the rights for Superman to what is now DC Comics for $110 or something like that, right? And just that is when it clicked for me. And I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to write about. I'm going to write about two guys who invent a successful superhero, and I'm going to set it in that time period. But for Wendy, what it was really about was, as I mentioned, my dad was a big comics reader, grew up in New York, and like a lot of people who grew up in Brooklyn, at that time especially, he would just regale me throughout my whole childhood with stories and memories of, you guys know, like Charlotte Ruse's and like, going to the movies and the all day on Saturday with the matinees with the full program and, 2 cartoons and a short subject and a newsreel and then 2 movies, the A picture and the B picture, and the whole thing cost, you tell me if you know, it's a quarter. Okay. So, like all of, and so the world.
What did that mean to you, that your dad had given you that?
Well, it was his childhood, and he always made it sound so wonderful and delightful, and like the radio programs that he grew up listening to and their theme songs that he would whistle for me, or or like the shadow, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men, the shadow knows. And that whole world was, he evoked that world of his childhood for me throughout my whole childhood, so that there was a kind of connection there, and the connection was comic books, because not only did he buy me comics and read them and then give them to me, but at this time in the 1970s, the early 70s, especially at DC Comics, they were doing this thing where they would have 80 or 100 page comic books, but for only 25 cents. But only the first story would be new, and then they would have to pad it out to get to the thing. And what they would pad them out with were reprinted stories from my dad's childhood. So I was literally reading the same comic books that he had read, and that completed that sort of continuity, or the continuum between his childhood and my childhood, so that, that's where I went when I thought, okay, I didn't go to Cleveland, where Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were from. That would have been an interesting way to go. But I went to Brooklyn. I went into the world, and so for me, it was always really, in large part, about time travel. Like I couldn't, as a little kid, I would wish I could go back and see what he was talking about, or eat a Charlotte Russe, or whatever it was, and I couldn't ever do that. But by writing this book, I was able to sort of travel into that past.
Whose voice came to you more easily, Sam or Joe?
They just
come at the same
presented
time?
themselves. I did have to figure out how poorly or well I wanted Joe to be able to speak English, and I probably started out with him as an immigrant, from Prague, and I probably started out with him speaking it less well, which probably felt more realistic. And then I got irritated with the limitations of having somebody that couldn't speak English that well, or you can get comedy out of it up to a point, but then when you really need him to be able to say something meaningful or expressive or just simply informative, it's annoying if you have to think if he can't conjugate in the past tense and whatever. So at some point I just decided I used sort of the Vladimir Nabokov solution that he had a governess who was English speaking when he and his brother were kids, so he had learned English as a child, and so that's why his English isn't perfect, but he speaks pretty well when he gets there, and then he learns quickly, and his English improves to a point, but it's never perfect. And then I was able to have fun with his misstatements and broken English at certain moments. For me, it was amusing. So maybe he took a little longer in that way.
In your acknowledgments, you thank Stan Lee for his insights into the golden age of comic books. What was something he told you about that period of time that you needed to work into your book?
Well, I mean, I think it was entertaining for him and I found my way. I know it was so funny when the book came out. Once the book came out and people read it, at that point I could have found my way to every single surviving veteran of comic books from that period, because I think I literally met all of them within the 5 years or so after the book came out, before they started to pass. And but when I started, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone in that world. I knew one movie producer, Lauren Schuler Donner, who was a producer on the X-Men movies, and I had met her through working on we tried to make a different project together, but because I knew her and she had that Marvel connection, she was my conduit, and she got me on the phone with Stan, and she got me on the phone with this man Gil Kane, who was a great comic book artist who started out in that period, and Will Eisner, and one other person, I'm blanking on who it was, but when I approached each of them, I went to see Gil Kane because he lived in LA and I was living in LA, went over to his apartment. I didn't ask them all that much about how'd you come up with this character? How'd you come up with that character? That's the part I could imagine. I can imagine how you would come up with a character. So I would ask them things like, what was the best cheap date? What would you do for a date? You didn't have that much money in New York City in 1940. And so to answer your question, I asked that to Stan, and he said the best cheap date in New York City was for the price of bus fare. They had these open top double-decker buses that went up and down Fifth Avenue, and you could sit on the top deck of New York City bus, not some special tour bus or something, and ride all the way up Park Avenue or whatever, and on a beautiful evening with your arm around your girl and you're looking up at the buildings, and that was the best. I mean, I'm not sure I was able to work it in to the book as a fully developed scene,
Sure.
but there's a reference is made to it, and I just would say, when you were at work in the bullpen with all the other guys around, did everybody smoke? Did nobody smoke? If everybody smoked, which is what they all said, then was there smoke everywhere? Yeah, there was. There was this pall of smoke just hanging over the whole room all the time, and they had fans going in the summertime that didn't help, and and it was hot. You have to remember, there's a world without air conditioning. And I think it was fun for them because usually at that point in their careers they were used to being asked more sort of about so how'd you come up with this character, whatever. And so for me to be asking them questions about what kind of what brand of pants did you buy? Like just weird little details, but I felt like I was going to need these things because there are a lot of things, especially when I was starting, there really was not much in the way of an internet at the time. Like I think there was Alta Vista was like a search engine, whatever that was. And so, to be able to, now if you want to say what were the 10 most popular brands of men's trousers in 1940, that'd be easy, right? But at the time, I didn't have any real easy way of finding that kind of thing out, aside from asking people who were there or remembered. So Stan was a total jet, and he was so kind to me. And I saw him a few times over the years after at various sort of like movie Marvel kind of things. I wrote a draft of the Spider-Man 2 movie, and so like I saw him in the premiere for that and a couple other things, and every time he just would like come on over and he's like, Michael, congratulations. And just, he was a jet. He was a total jet. They were all, and Will Eisner too, who was one of the greatest artists who ever, put pencil to paper in the comic book field. Just technically, he was an innovator. He was incredibly gifted draftsman. And I have a couple Will Eisner stories I could tell if you want to hear them. But he was so, I got an hour out of him at a WonderCon, a comic book convention in Oakland, California. And he sat down with me for an hour, and two things happened. One, in the course of the hour, I asked him, do you think, like I noticed, it's obvious, a lot of your cohort, this young guys who go into the field at this time, were Jews. Why? Like, what do you think the explanation is? And he's like, well, if you wanted to make your living with a pen or pencil, and the top was commercial art, illustration, advertising, the slick magazines doing illustrations for Collier's or the Saturday Evening Post, like that was the top, and they didn't hire Jews. So you had to start at the bottom. And the bottom was comics. Like there was no lower place to be than comic books. And so that's where we all were, whether we had talent or not. And so I think and the same was true to, somebody that has a kind of easy fluency with language and is looking to make money might have wanted to go into the advertising copywriting game, and they didn't hire Jews either, so you're in comics. So, he gave me this kind of like socioeconomic explanation. And then he said, but now that I think about it, I mean, there was something in Jewish tradition. He said, what became the epigraph for the book, we have this history of imaginary solutions to impossible problems, like the golem. And I had just the day before written the golem into the book for the first time. Like I still wasn't sure what I was doing with the golem yet, but I had Joe, he was in Prague, golem. I was just starting to write the golem into the story, and then he said this thing, and I just was like, oh, this is incredible. So that was a gift that he gave me. And then we were done. It was time for him to go back to doing whatever he was meant to be doing at this comic book convention. And I thanked him, and I wrote my book, and I thanked him in the acknowledgments. And then I met him afterwards at Comic-Con in San Diego, and he said, after you left, my wife Anne came in, and she said, who was that guy that you were just talking to? And I said, fanboy. So I thought that was pretty funny.
We learn how Sam and Joe create the Escapist. How did you come up with the Escapist?
That was really hard. That was one of the hardest things about writing this book. I went for years, maybe if I took 5 years to write a book, I went for a full 3 years with a placeholder superhero that I knew was not good, was not right, was not what I would settle on. But I had this, talk about impossible problems, insoluble problems. Like I had this a much harder job than Sammy and Joe have. When Sammy and Joe start, there's Superman and there's Batman. That's it. And then they're sort of the pulp hero characters from pulp magazines that were sort of the antecedents of the comic book superheroes. So all of the everything was wide open to them. Super speed, a magic lantern, and all the made out of lightning, and every animal was still untaken. There was no Hawkman yet. There was no there was no people with the power of elements and radiation and all of these things that it was all there, and very quickly most of it got used, and then everything else was an imitation. But I had to come up with something that would be persuasively, convincingly original, because I was going to say that it was successful. So it couldn't be lame. It had to be something that when like a 10-year-old in 1939 saw it, he'd be like, oh, that looks cool. I'm going to buy this, and it's going to be, it becomes this big success. And that turned out to be really, really difficult. And
did you run it by people?
no, I kept my shame to myself. I had this character called, I'm embarrassed after all these years.
Tell me one.
He was called Captain Sunbeam. Okay, I know. I knew it sucked. It was a placeholder, and he had the powers of the sun, which, weirdly, actually hasn't been used that many. It's been used for sure, and in a way, Superman nowadays has his powers because of yellow sun, red sun, whatever. But anyway, I just thought I know I have to fix this. So I think I was at least 2.5 years into it, and I started a revision. I went back to the beginning of the book. I was aware it had lots of other problems too. And I noticed, within the first 20, 25 pages, there are 2 references to Houdini. Just in passing, sort of, really. And then I thought, that's funny, and then there was maybe a later one somewhere, and I was like, why am I talking about Houdini? And then, within nanoseconds, it's like escapism. Comic books are condemned as being escapist, pure escapist trash, right? That's the way you condemn something. And I have Joe, and he already was there as someone who has escaped. And it just, everything coalesced, and I thought, okay, there's only ever been one superhero escape artist. It's a character called Mr. Miracle. He was created by Jack Kirby in the 1970s. He was partly inspired by, of course, Houdini or that kind of magic, but also by a well-known comic book artist named Jim Steranko, who claimed to have been an escape artist when he was a young man, and had a lot of stories about his escape artist adventures. But that's it. So I guess I resigned myself. Okay, I'm never going to find the unused but awesome character. But at least I found something that is pretty awesome, because escape artistry is something I've always been interested in, that has ties thematically to all kinds of things that are going on in this book already, and that has only been used once. So at least it's only been used once, and the kids in 1940 don't know that, because Mr. Miracle doesn't come out till 1970, so nobody's going to be like, hey, this is a ripoff of Mr. Miracle, because they haven't heard of him yet. So it seemed perfect.
Is there anything in the book that you wanted to have in the book, but you just couldn't fit into the story?
Well, yeah, there probably were a fair number of things. I tried to, there's something about the story of what the move after the war, the move to the suburbs. The book moves to the suburbs, and the characters move out to this sort of fictionalized version of Levittown, the Long Island Levittown, called Bloomtown, and the book jumps, and so we jump with it, and Sammy and Rosa and their child jump, and everybody's, next time we see them, they're all living out in the suburbs. But there was something to do with what happened to America, to New York City, and also to the superhero in the period after World War II, where we had the atom bomb suddenly becomes this thing that not even Superman can, stop. Like there's sort of superheroes are invented, very quickly go to war, they defeat Hitler, many times, every issue, and or they defeat Japan and over and over and over again. And there's this the early Superman stories before the war. It's funny, the bad guys are all like crooked politicians and like slumlords, and it's very left, like kind of New Deal, left progressive political storytelling with very meat and potatoes kind of villains, and then, but now it's wartime. Suddenly we have all these great villains, and then at the end of the war we get this unstoppable, inhuman villain that seemed to take the luster off of comic book superheroes, and that's when all these other genres really started to flourish in comics, like Western comics and romance comics, and I don't know, I felt like there was a story in all of that somewhere, but I made the decision after maybe I gave it a little try. I was like, no, I just let's carry on. Let's get to the Senate subcommittee hearings that kind of bring the whole House of Comics cards crashing down.
All right, get ready for your questions. I have a few more for you. Okay. I wanted to ask about Sammy. Would you have written about Sam Lee's sexual identity differently now? Even though you were writing about...
Differently now?
Yeah. I know you're writing from in the year 2000 for 1940s, but now it's 2025.
I don't know. I mean, I was so anxious to get that period stuff right, however that could be defined, to the best of my ability. And so, I did the research I could do at the time, and I read accounts that I could find that were written, more or less in ballpark in that period. And I read this wonderful book called The Gay Metropolis. I wish I could remember the author's name. Which is about New York City as a city, about the lives of predominantly gay men, but not entirely, especially in the 20th century, and especially in this pre-1970s period. And so that's where I found out that, for example, under the Third Avenue L, when there was a Third Avenue L, was the big cruising ground, and what the cruising grounds were during World War II, and but also about how big of a secret it was, and how deep that secret had to be kept, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure what would be what in the interval between when I was writing it and now. I don't know what would have changed about the documents that I was able to get a hold of. But I just, at some point also, I had to stop doing the research and just take the leap into actually imagining how it would feel, but not how it would feel to be me doing this, but how it would feel to be Sammy, as I had come to understand him, with his background and his childhood and his father and his mother and his experiences. And there's no book that could tell me how to do that. I had to write that book. So, and it's really easy to get stuck in the research because
I bet
it's necessary, and it's so helpful and so useful. And then the internet came along, the web came along while I was still working on the book, and suddenly it's this horrendous waste of time is always one click away from what you're doing that is quote unquote legitimate research, right? And it's like, I just need to know what kind of engines were used in Deuce and a Half trucks in World War II? Like, were they GM or and then 3 hours later, you're on the I don't remember that episode of the Brady Bunch, right? How did I get here?
I work at a writer's space where you have to ask for the password.
Yes,
for that reason.
So it's so horrible, but you do need it, and so much great so much of what's in this book came from research and subsequent books too. Even when I was wasting scads of time, I wasn't only doing that, and things that completely altered the course of whichever book I've written, if it needed to be researched, and most of them have it to one degree or another, things I just didn't know that not only made me go like, oh crap, I have to redo this whole thing because I have it so wrong, but also like, oh, I didn't know that. That's so much better. But you do have to stop. And the thing is also, this was a discovery that really took me by surprise. You can do too much. You can get things too right. So you can do too much research. And I talked about how I was nervous and worried about what people who had been around at the time would make of my New York, that I was, trying to pass off as the New York. And I remember this guy, a man, he was a literary critic, and he came up to me. I knew his name. He has, I was a little afraid of his reputation. I didn't know what he was going to say to me as he was coming up and he said, I just want you to know, I read your book. I don't know how you did it. You got so much right. It's really impressive. And I was like, thank you. Oh my God, thank you. And he says, there's just one thing you got so wrong. I can't imagine how you made such a bonehead mistake. And okay, what is it? And he says, you say there's a Brooklyn Dodgers football team. Surely the Brooklyn Dodgers were a baseball team. And I said, well, yes, of course, but there was also a Brooklyn Dodgers football team. It was an NFL team. They played at Ebbets Field. I'm talking, you were there. You don't really and it's like he didn't know. And the NFL was not that big a deal. It was considered really low class at the time, and baseball was everything. And obviously it was possible to have grown up in Brooklyn during the period when the Brooklyn Dodgers football team was active and have not known anything about them, right? And have forgotten them. And that told me like, oh, I got that too right. Like it was not a good detail to use. And I think there's a term I've seen now, people call it the Tiffany problem, which is that Tiffany was a not uncommon name in like medieval England, right? So for a first name, for a man, I believe. So if you used it, you could say, this is authentic and accurate and everything, and here's the documentation to prove it. But anybody who's reading your book is going to be like, "What, Tiffany? this yeoman archer named Tiffany or something like that." So I think that's something to always bear in mind.
Let's go to some questions. All right, who's got a question for Michael? Right there.
Oh, sorry. Hi. I was just wondering. I feel like the book has a lot of very striking themes about kind of retaliatory violence and kind of the relationship between violence in fiction and violence in reality. There's kind of a striking scene where Joe almost beats up a fellow Jew at a baseball game. Just because he's speaking German. I was wondering, in the 25 year, it's very realized, but I was wondering in the 25 years since this book, if your opinions or your thoughts on the relationship between fictional violence and real violence, or just violence in general, have changed.
Well, I don't. The example of with Joe getting into the fight. At the football game, the Brooklyn Dodgers football game, to me is an example of violence as a product of a increasing feeling of impotence and frustration, and Joe is getting to a point at that point in the story where he sort of bought into Sammy's pitch that if they just created this character that would sort of alert the world to the dangers of fascism and Nazism specifically, and that things would change, and also he would make all this money, and he would be able to use that money to rescue his family. And as those things aren't really materializing, and meanwhile what he's hearing, the news is sort of getting worse and worse and worse, his sense of failure is increasing, and it's that repressed, that anger is always there, and it just starts to come out more and more, and is manifesting itself as violence, in acts of violence. That's, to me, separate than the idea that is very much present in the book, that I think is part of what's going on, both was going on in reality at the time and is going on sort of within the fictional context of the book around those Senate subcommittee hearings into juvenile delinquency, when the extremely well-intentioned and almost, I would say, quite noble psychiatrist, Dr. Frederick Wertham, had been working up in Harlem with poor Black children and poor white children too. And he was truly and deeply concerned with what was going wrong with their lives, and why they themselves were becoming violent or getting in trouble with the law and juvenile delinquency and all of these things. And and he noticed that they, at least as he reported, that all of them, or most of them, certainly many of them, were devoted readers of comic books. So he made this, he confused correlation with causation, which, as most of us do every day. And he decided it was the comic books that were causing the deviant behavior. And then when he went looking, as one does once one's already made up one's mind, when he went looking for all the things that were themselves deviant in the comic books, he discovered in some cases it was a big stretch what he found, and in other cases it was not that hard to find, and he settled very quickly on the horror comics that were being produced by EC at the time. And so this idea that, which we've just seen, it was a moral panic, like many moral panics, and it was a moral panic involving children, such as we've had many times since Dr. Wertham's day, and he wrote this book, Seduction of the Innocent, which is not a how-to. And it was his thesis that reading comic books would make, because they were violent and they had like horrific images or whatever, images of criminality, that it would then inspire that kind of behavior. And of course, we've heard that with rap lyrics, that controversy, and video games, and people can find evidence and studies to prove whatever it is they need to be proved. But I don't think my attitude toward, I think what I learned, Dr. Wertham and that book are just hated in the comic book world. And they always, from the moment, obviously, because it actually destroyed comic books for a period of time, those hearings. Most comic book companies went out of business in the wake of those hearings. And so he's just this villainous figure. And I made this discovery doing the research that led me to a more nuanced view, because he actually was a kind of an amazing guy. He created this free psychiatric clinic that treated a lot of kids that needed some kind of treatment. So I got a more nuanced view of it, but it also didn't persuade me that he was necessarily right about comic books. On the other hand, there was an EC comic book that he makes a real meal out of in his book, where there's a baseball game that's played, this notorious story, and the bases are the organs of a man who's been murdered, right? It's like,
good Lord,
the heart is this, for I don't know, whatever. It's like, you can imagine, I don't need to describe it to you, but there it is. And yeah, kids were buying that, but nowadays that seems tame. It's kind of a cute idea. So I didn't buy into that narrative, but I mean, violence is is a part of popular entertainment, and it always has been. And comics, especially in the early days, were popular entertainment, and it's inescapable, and it's still there in comic books today. And now there's no more comics code, so they can show whatever they want to, basically. Anyway,
Any other questions before we? There's one right here. Let's get this couple over here.
Hi, I'd love to know if you have a personal or familial connection to Prague or the Czech Republic, and whether you think choosing that location for where Joe comes from really influenced his character in the story, or if you think you could have chosen maybe any other Nazi-occupied part of Europe.
I mean, that's a good question, and it's and weirdly, no, I have absolutely no connection that I know of to Prague at all, or really. I mean, I had one grandparent who's from the former Austro-Hungarian Empire, which Prague was also part of, but is now Ukraine. So it's not that part of the empire at all. And I don't know honestly, I needed him. I don't know why I decided to make Joe an immigrant. I have no idea. There weren't, as far as I know, and I never uncovered a pioneering comic book early guy among the first, like, let's say, among the guys who created the first 25 successful comic book superheroes at any one of the publishers. As far as I know, none of them came as a young man, as an adult, to America. Maybe some of them had come as children. I don't know. Most of them were born in New York. Not all of them were Jewish by any means, but they were mostly urban East Coast. I don't know why I'd said he was an immigrant. It was just something
It was a good story.
Something I just said. I just said it. I just wrote
Did it.
He just showed up one day. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I said Sammy's mother came in and said, "Move over. We need room in the bed. Like, move over." I don't know why I did that. I just wrote it. And then I was like, well, from where? And I thought, well, I need this to be at the start of things. I knew I wanted there to basically only have been Superman at this point. So that's 1938. And Batman was 39. And then the rush really started in like around 1940, end of 39 into 1940. So I needed him to have been an immigrant from a country that was under threat, occupied or invaded, or was Germany itself, right? Those were my options. Like Germany, bad place to be a Jew in 1939, let's say. Austria, Anschluss, also bad. And then the next sort of domino that fell was Czechoslovakia. So I thought, okay, so that's March 1939, and I'm looking in my almanac or whatever because I wasn't Googling things. And I thought, March 39, that feels about right. That feels like slotting it right in there. When he arrives, there can already be a Batman, but not much else. And so I went to Prague on my honeymoon. That would have been 8 years before or whatever when I was writing this book. So I know what Prague looks like. I've been there. I got a strong feeling for it while I was there. I'm just going to say he's from Prague. It was just this instantaneous chain of decisions, and I was like, Prague, great. But it was such a huge decision because, and some level, that thing what I was talking about with Will Eisner, that he mentioned the golem, that was part of that chain too, right? Because I was writing the golem in there, but I hadn't quite got to the point of thinking the golem is a superhero. Like the golem is the first Jewish superhero, or of the modern era, let's say. I mean, however you define not biblical. So, but it was all just a weird, arbitrary decision that then in hindsight looks like it was a magical foreknowledge of where I was going and that I was thematically in control of my book from the start. Just like those references to Houdini that were just sort of sitting there, and I wasn't. And meanwhile, there I am with Captain Sunbeam, for all these years. So it wasn't on purpose, but on some level, it's really hard not to think that it must have been, or else why did I do it? Why did I make Joe an immigrant? I don't know.
I saw you at the opera a few nights ago.
Yes, I was there.
You looked very swanky.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
What
That was my B tuxedo.
That was your B tuxedo.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That was my A tuxedo. I couldn't find the pants. And I know this, New York and everything, but I just thought like no pants was still.
Would have been too much.
Yeah.
What was it like to see your work produced as an opera?
I mean, it was insane because it's opera, and like I knew that. Obviously, I told Mason Bates that he could go ahead and try to make an opera out of Cavalier and clay. I know what opera is. I have listened to very much in the way of recorded opera arias. I listen to them all the time, all kinds of great. Kira Takano was one of my favorites. And like, I know what opera is. I've even been to some operas, not recently, but in my adult life. And I like knowing all that, I still just didn't know what, I mean, like, in some weird way, it took actually seeing something I had written turn into opera. And I was like, oh my God, they sing the whole time. Like from start to finish. And this is Sammy and Joe, and they're just singing everything, right? It's like, I wasn't ready for it. Like, and I wasn't ready for the Met and opening night of the season. Like, yeah, I've read Edith Wharton novels where that's a big deal or whatever, but like still, it's a huge deal, the opening night of the season of the Metropolitan Opera. And like, I knew that, but I just didn't know it. And it's like, I said to my son the next day when I was reporting on it, he lives out in LA. I said, it's like what I expected to look around it and Bruce Wayne was going to be there. And it's one of those scenes in a Batman movie where like the Joker and his henchmen are going to come in and they're going to like, ski down the stairs or whatever. Like, it's like, it's the way in a big Hollywood movie, it's hyper opulent and but this was in real life, and the people wasn't just black tie and beautiful gowns. Like, people had, I don't know, did you see the piano hat lady?
I did. I saw the Escapist.
Yeah, there were people with masks and capes. There were themed people, and it just had that grandeur and fizz and before the show even started, just walking in, I really just hadn't given it that much thought, I guess. But I'm still not sure, even if I had been told or warned or someone said, it's going to be a big deal, I don't think it could have actually conveyed just how epic the whole night felt, including the opera itself. And like, they're doing things that I will never be able to do, not just with as a novelist, not with just the incredible power of characters being able to just simply sing what they're feeling and have it move you instantly, like a shot, like an injection of emotion. I can't do that as a novel, as a quote unquote realistic novelist, where you're obliged to use things like indirection and I'm trying to sort of realistically portray how people talk, or what they don't say is often much more important than what they do say. And if you compare the scenes in the book where where Sammy and Rosa acknowledge Sammy's gayness and what it's going to mean for them to get married without ever acknowledging Sammy's gayness or what it's going to mean. Like it's all done through the things they don't say to each other, because that's all I can manage it's all going to start to break apart if I try to go too direct. It's good because that's not really how people talk to each other, especially in this particular time period where such things had to be kind of kept, played very carefully. So, and then, to see it, how powerful it is when it is just being expressed directly. And like that was a really powerful experience, but also things like the stagecraft of it and the illusion of it. And so, to see Luna Moth, the character of Luna Moth, as a woman with moth wings who's flying, but not in the way it would seem in a movie where it would almost seem too real if they used really good special effects, or, it looks fake, but with that incredible hyper realism, or I guess surrealism of where fake is more real than real and hits you more. And the example I always like to give, another example, is with King Kong, the original, the 1933 King Kong. Nobody ever watched that movie and thought, I wonder if they used a real gorilla. Right? It never looked like a real gorilla. It's not just that we have like better CG now and whatever. It didn't need to look like a real gorilla. It needed to look more real than a real gorilla would look. And like I remember showing that movie to my kids when they were like, my oldest, when they were like 7 and 5 or something. And when King Kong first appears, and they're like, oh, he looks so fake. And like, yeah, you can see his fur was like this in one shot, and then the next shot it's moved a little bit. And I was like, okay, guys, okay. And then we get to the scene where he's fighting with the Tyrannosaurus or whatever, and he grabs its jaws and he rips its head apart, and the kids are like, oh, like that. I'm like, looks so fake, does it? So, there's something that I only have words. I can't, I mean, hopefully I'm hoping you to create some kind of image in your mind when I'm describing what Luna Moth looks like, but I can't even guarantee what you're seeing. I don't know what you're seeing. Ultimately, I'm using every word I can that I think is going to get across what I'm seeing, but it's speculative. I'm guessing, that I'm hoping it's going to work, but I have no way of confirming it. And I know because then we did a actual comic book of The Escapist, based on the adventures of the Escapist at Dark Horse Comics, and a lot of artists worked on various stories, and a lot of them drew versions of Luna Moth, and they no two were alike. They all look different. So
Did you get to see them at the opera, though?
Yeah, and to see this, just everyone, we're all looking at the same thing, and it's wondrous, and it's so it's truly magical. And the reason it's magical is because there's some kind of, illusionist principle at work that makes things that are heightened look more real than things that were literally real.
Michael, thank you so much for tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Merci.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
As you know, we have a very special musical performance for tonight's event. The Met Opera adaptation of Cavalier and Clay premiered on Sunday. In a moment, we're going to talk to its librettist, Gene Scheer. But first, we've got an exclusive performance. Please welcome to the stage Miles, I'm going to see if I get this right, Miles Mikkonen, who plays Sam Clay. And Brian Wagner on piano. Will you tell me what song you're going to play first and set it up for us?
Yes, and please welcome Brian Waghorn on the piano. So we're going to start right at the top of the opera. This is Sammy's first big aria called Trace and Superman, and he just met Joe a few moments ago. They're in the bedroom, and he's just expressing how much comic books mean to him, and underneath it all, we can certainly see the start of Sammy's sexual identity and that whole journey that we're about to go on through the show. So here's Trace and Superman. I traced it. I wish I could draw something like this, but I can't. I draw like I walk, stumbling from place to place. But I can't stop dreaming about what it feels like to do something this good, to do anything this good. Tracing Superman, tracing each line, tracing each curve for just 10 cents. Every kid in America gets to know what it's like to be a hero. Not just kids like me who had polio. Tracing Superman. You're not just tracing someone else's life. You are the one leaping from skyscrapers, taking off and landing in a new world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I want to say what an honor it is to have a character like Sammy at the Opera House. So, Michael, thank you so much for bringing superheroes to the Met. This has been such a fun project to work on. But, you know, I am not here by myself. We've got the other title character here who just made an astonishing Metropolitan Opera debut on Sunday night. Please welcome to the stage my colleague, Andrzej Filonczek, Joe Kavalier.
You're the best.
Yeah. So we're going to skip the scene when I go to Empire Comics and we pitch the whole. That just happened, and now we're back. We just got the green light from our boss, Mr. Anapol, that we're going to start making this comic book, and now we're trying to figure out what we have to do.
Yes. And it was so amazing to listen to Michael, actually, what was he thinking during this process. And now I think that we can brought to life the scene and again in the new colors, I think.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Joe, they're gonna give us a chance. We got till Monday. Sammy, we can really get big money with this. Yeah. We just gotta figure out
who he is
and what he does.
He flies, yes.
No flying, no bulletproof skin. Need something new.
Okay, let me be thinking. Lion Man, he roars like a lion.
Bad guys go deaf. Let's get serious.
I am serious.
I'm sorry, Joe, but we can do this. Hold on. maybe we got it wrong. It's not who he is. It's not what he does. The question is why? Why is he doing it?
To fight crime, to fight evil.
But why? Well, take Batman. His parents got killed, so he takes revenge.
They kill your father, you want revenge, right?
My ma, yeah. My dad, no way. He was a schmuck. Left when I was a kid. Did a strongman act in vaudeville, all muscle, no heart. Your dad?
All heart, no muscle, not the strongest Jew in the world.
Maybe that's what they need there. A super Houdini to all those who toil in the bonds of slavery and the shackles of oppression. He offers liberation. Give me some paper. Armed with superb physical and mental training, he roams the globe, coming to the aid of those who languish in tyranny's chains.
He frees people. He helps them escape.
He is
the Escapist. He comes in the darkest hour,
guided by the light
of his golden key.
of his golden key. Eluding capture with the skill of deception and evasion. The Escapist. He puts on a mask
that sees the world,
not as it is,
but how it could be.
Rescued,
broken,
redeemed, the Escapist.
Before you go, I want to ask you a few questions.
Please, yes.
Miles, you're a tenor, yes?
Yes, I'm a
and
tenor.
Andre is a baritone.
Yes, that's right.
Miles, why does that fit for these two characters of Sam and Joe?
Oh, I mean, I think Sammy is so much about, even though he's totally lost about his own future, he has this idea in his mind that there is a world to believe in. There is a future to believe in. And I think with the tenor voice, and then Mason wrote so much of this in, for the music nerds out there, F sharp major, which was a really favorite key of the Tin Pan Alley composers. Yeah. So you get this New York energy, and you get his kind of drive, and that kid from Flatbush who just wants to pound the streets and make his art in this city. And I love singing the role for it.
Andre, it was your Met debut.
Yes, that's right.
Tell us more about that. What does that mean to you?
We heard already about the opening nights at the Met, so there was such a special vibe and such a great scent of the success during this night, and I think that we leveled this up and we presented a beautiful performance. But just to a European-based singer to open a Met season as a Polish guy, it's also been something else. So it was a great night. But for everybody, the whole project is such a unique and refreshing in opera business that everybody enjoyed it big time.
Thank you both for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Let's bring Gene Scheer to the stage, the opera's librettist, to join me. Everyone, welcome Gene Scheer. What was your initial reaction to, yes, we're going to turn this into an opera?
How are we going to do this? No, it was a daunting task to do it, but I love the book so much that I was very, very excited about it. When I'm looking at a source for an opera, yeah, there's always challenges to it, but I think what are the assets that it brings? And the story that Michael wrote is so beautiful. The language is just extraordinary. And the sense of energy and the fulcrum of the story is so moving that I thought we could bring it to life with opera, with all different kinds of sleight of hand that we needed to do in order to bring it to the stage.
Well, you brought Moby Dick to the stage in an opera. So what do you know about translating such a huge piece of text into something that can be combined into one evening?
Well, if there's a trick to it, it's to try to understand that this is principally a musical expression of a story. So I have to set it up so that music can win the day. I can't lean on language. I have to lean on the music, and I have to set it up so that the composer, that he or she can find ways of musically carrying the emotional content of the story. And with this story, when I read Michael's beautiful book, and I was really thinking about how I'm going to do this, I just very soon the first idea was that if I could create 3 different worlds. The world of the Holocaust and Europe, the world of the 1940s, the Chrysler Building, and these immigrant energy and so forth, and then the world of the characters, the comic book characters that these characters create. If they could have 3 different visual worlds and 3 different musical languages, that would be a way of when they crash together and to display Joe's the tragedy that he's dealing with. I was looking for a musical correlate. So it wasn't just about I'm gonna do the Europe as in this one, the black and white world, and these other worlds in different ways. The idea from the get-go was if the more distinct they are, and then musically Mason, who is so incredibly skilled and brilliant, can have these 3 worlds smashed together as they do in Act 2. We could show musically what's happening in his world.
Which world was the most rewarding for you?
Certainly the world of the comic book was so much fun. I love pop culture, and I wanted to bring some of that to the Met stage. And I think people are thirsting for that kind of thing. And the idea of doing a radio show bring a comic book to life and with all the fun of it, I just thought that was going to be great fun. And it gave Mason an incredible opportunity to write music that underscored the creation of these insane, wonderful characters, the Escapist, Luna Moth, and so forth. And so that was probably the most fun aspect of it. But everything's challenging. Everything was rewarding as we moved through it.
We're hearing it with this beautiful piano, but it's electronic music in the opera.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Rock.
Yeah, I mean, Mason is a DJ, not just, he wasn't like, when I say, I did this when I was like 12 years old is one thing. Mason actually is still a DJ, and he's incredibly well schooled with electronic music. It's always a part of his compositional palette. And he brings that to the Met, and it's really cool. So we have all these different elements. It's still the acoustic orchestra is still the principal instrument of the evening, but he brings it in a way that's very new and fun. And there's a lot of young people that were people that we don't normally see at the opera who showed up the other night who had a great time. So I think it's a nice way to go.
I interviewed Mason on the show, and I asked him what we should talk to you about. And he said that he finds many people are interested in the Jewish mysticism that's woven throughout the story and elements of even magical realism. How did you think about that?
Well, it's obviously it's woven throughout this beautiful book. I had to find a way of, there's so much conflation in an opera. There's so much cutting of the material, of course. You can't put this would have been longer than The Ring if we had done the entire, if we had done everything that's in Michael's book. So I had to, to find a way. And one of the things I leaned on was, in the book, of course, there's the golem, but it was hard to handle that in terms of time, in terms of how much time to establish what the golem was and the significance of it. So when I used the song Anima Amim, which was allegedly written on a boxcar going to Treblinka, and it means that I believe that the Messiah will come. And while I'm well aware that it's not exactly the same thing, or it doesn't have all the exact same connotations, I used it both in the beginning of the show and at the end of the show when Joe puts on the mask in order to re-enter the world and to actually see the world through the escapist eyes. And Anima Amim is sung again, and it means I believe that the Messiah will come one day and free us. And so it was a sort of a nod to Michael's beautiful book and the way in which this was sort of woven into it. There's it's a musical thing, it's an opera. So the question, when you say how does Jewish mysticism woven into it, it's how it's woven into the music. That is the principal thing. I mean, I could have had a character, weave different aspects of Jewish mysticism into the story, but it's in his score. It's in if you hear the mandolin, which is, it plays a significant role in Don Giovanni, and it plays a significant role in The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay. And there were mandolin or Jewish mandolin orchestras. You think of klezmer music, of course, as being a principal kind of music for the Jewish experience back then. But mandolins were also part of it, and Mason found that, and he uses it really, really beautifully to sort of invoke sort of a Jewish feel and a Jewish mystical feel.
You're from New York.
I am.
What is special about Kavalier and Clay as a New York story?
Oh, it's an immigrant story, and this was the gateway for immigrants. My grandparents came through here. I wore my grandfather's, who was Polish, Jewish Polish guy, who wore his cufflinks to the opening night the other night,
lovely.
And it was sort of a nod to this. This immigrant story. I mean, this is, I'm sure a lot of people in this room, we are first generation, second generation, third generation. We all come from somewhere else, and New York was the gateway to it. And what's so beautifully depicted in Michael's book, and that Mason and I really wanted to honor and try to invoke, was the sense of energy that immigrants have. They still do, how hard they work, how they are the backbone of so much, and certainly the backbones of dreaming about what this country could be. If you want to know what America is, you ask an immigrant, right? So and that is that's what Joe and Sam, together, sort of represent, and it's. We wanted to get that energy, and I think through Mason's incredibly beautiful music, and not to mention Bart Scher's great production, we're able to hopefully bring that to life.
We're going to hear another piece of music in just a moment, but is there anything that you've wanted to say about the opera that you haven't had a chance to?
Oh, I don't know. It's been a great joy. It is a real team sport opera, and that is both a challenge and also it's the greatest glory of it. The singers that you're hearing tonight are so wonderful. They're young singers. They're the future they're a big part of the future of the Metropolitan Opera and the opera scene around the world. And I've just so enjoyed working with Bart and Yannick, Nesta Sagan, who the conductor, who is a genius, and the designers, Jenny and Mark Grimmer. These people are just so talented, and it's really a joy to work with them and all be pulling to try to bring Michael's beautiful book to the stage. It's been a great joy. The only thing I would like to add for your audience, both listening, watching, and such, is that I think this opera really is a great on-ramp opera for people who don't know opera, who don't just know about it, or are scared by opera. This is a show you can. I think people are surprised and say, I understand what's going on. It's a musical language that I really can relate to, and you're moved by the story, and you care about the people on stage. And I think so. With that, I'll leave it alone. But I do want to sort of get the word out that I think don't be afraid. Come to the opera. Come to this opera. I think you'll enjoy it.
Gene Scheer, thank you for your creativity.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Onto the stage, I'm going to invite Soon-Lee Pierce. Soon-Lee plays the part of Rosa, the artist strong-will love of Joe. Soon-Lee, come on up. You're going to sing the aria, Open Your Eyes. Where does this fit into the story?
So fast forward to after Joe and Sam's duet, The Escapist has been created and has had its first successful airing on the radio, which Rosa has heard and absolutely hates it, thinks it's total and complete garbage, and ends up telling Joe himself that she thinks that, not realizing that it is Joe Kavalier. And so then ensues their kind of meet cute moment, but she's actually there for a call to action on behalf of the Transatlantic Rescue Agency for their mission to bring children who are overseas in Europe during the Nazi occupation over to the United States. And this is her call to action. All of you who can hear my voice, please stop whatever you are doing. Put down the iron, the newspaper, leave the dishes in the sink. Please close your eyes, close your eyes, and listen to what I have to say. My name is Rosa Sachs with the Transatlantic Rescue Agency. Our mission is to bring Jewish children out of Europe into safety. Millions need to be saved. They are trapped in cities from Warsaw to Toulouse to Amsterdam to Prague. We have a ship called the Ark of Miriam. It can carry but a few hundred children at a time, but each crossing delivers these precious children to freedom. We cannot take them all, but shall we not save those we can? But shall we not save those we can? Open your eyes and look at your children. You know in your hearts what needs to be done. Give what you can. The Ark of Miriam is only a dream. Without you, Thank you. So this next bit of musical snackage is Joe and Rosa's love duet, where they unite under their common cause and belief in the war efforts and bringing these children safely to the States, and thus ensues their love story. So Ange.
We know each other already.
Yeah. Look, the ship is getting closer. The ship is getting closer. Imagine Sarah is on it. Imagine that Sarah stepping off the ship and onto the pier like a tip of a pen, touching a blank piece of paper. Creating a world with a past, a present, and a future. Picture what lies before them. Think of what they've left behind, children with one chance to start again. This country was meant to be a refuge, a place for the desperate to come. It's right and life, a new beginning, like the tip of a pen, drawing a new life, creating a better world. Imagine thousands and thousands of lives traced to a step on this shore. Shall we draw it together?
Man, well done.
Thank you again to the Metropolitan Opera, the stars of The Adventures of Kavalier and Clay. Thank you to Gene Scheer, and thank you to Michael Chabon for being with us. Thanks to our partners at the New York Public Library for hosting us and getting you e-copies here every month. And thanks to everyone at Park Boulevard for making it look magical on the virtual screen. And thank you to WNYC's producers and engineers for making the event sound great. It'll be on the radio Monday at 1 o'clock. Tune in. Okay. On to October. We are going to be rereading The King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. The book follows a man named Roman who returns to his hometown in Virginia after learning his family has managed to anger a local gang. How far will Roman go to save his family from their clutches? S.A. Cosby will be joining us right back here on October 28th. So mark your calendars, grab your copies, and join us in just a few weeks. I'm Allison Stewart. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. Please get home safely.